In the winter of 2009, a restoration laboratory in Munich received a broken clay tablet from a private estate sale in eastern Turkey. It was small, about the size of a man's palm, dark with age, and cracked into 4 pieces along its long axis. The catalog note that came with it said only that it had been in the family's possession since the 1880s, and that no one who had ever seen it had been able to read it. The lab passed the tablet to a philologist named Reinhard Salzmann. After 4 months of quiet work in a room without windows, Dr. Salzmann sent a letter to a colleague in Vienna. The letter was 1 line long. He wrote, "The tablet is a receipt." He wrote, "It is a receipt for a trade, and the 2 parties named on it are not both from the surface of the world." The colleague in Vienna did not answer for 11 days. When he finally did, he asked Salzmann to send photographs. He asked him to send transcriptions. He asked him, above all, not to speak to anyone else about what he had found until they had met in person. They met in a hotel in Salzburg in the March of 2010. What Salzmann laid on the table between them, in a folder with a plain gray cover, was a translation of the complete text of a Sumerian clay tablet. The tablet described an ongoing arrangement between the people who lived on the ground and a people who lived far beneath it. It listed 7 things that the people beneath had asked to be given. It listed 7 things they had offered in exchange. And it named the conditions under which the arrangement would hold, and it named the conditions under which it would break. By the end of that meeting in Salzburg, the colleague from Vienna had asked Salzmann to burn the folder. Salzmann refused. Within a year, Dr. Salzmann was dead, and the tablet, which the lab in Munich had listed on its own internal register under the catalog number K4106, was no longer in Munich, and no one has been able to say, on any public record, where it is now. The Sumerians, more than 4,000 years ago, wrote almost nothing that was not accounting. They wrote receipts, they wrote inventories, and they wrote records of grain moved from one storehouse to another, and records of sheep counted at the gates of temples, and records of labor debts owed by one man to another. Every so often, out of the great mass of that clay bookkeeping, a tablet surfaces that is not counting sheep. It is counting something else. It is counting something that the modern reader is not supposed to be able to count. The tablet catalogued as K4106 is one of those. It is written in the same hand as an ordinary temple receipt of the late 3rd millennium. It uses the same signs, and it uses the same formulas. And what it counts, from the first line to the last, is a trade between the surface world and what the Sumerians called the Kurgal, the Great Below. The Kurgal, as the tablet describes them, are not gods, they are not spirits, nor are they the shades of the dead. They are a people, in the way the tablet uses the word for people, and they live in the earth the way we live on it. They have cities and rulers. Their language, the writer of the tablet claims, has been transcribed in 15 separate places, each time noting the exact sign combination and the exact sound. And they have need of certain things they cannot make for themselves. And, according to the tablet, they have been trading for those things, with human beings on the surface, for a length of time the scribe writes down as, quote, "since the first grain was cut," unquote. Dr. Salzmann's translation, the translation the folder in Salzburg contained, breaks the tablet into 3 sections. The first section names the 7 things the Kurgal ask for. The second names the 7 things they give in return. The third section, which Salzmann called the terms, describes when the trade takes place, how it takes place, and what happens if either side fails to hold to it. Every part of what follows in this video comes from that translation. The wants come first, because they are the part that is hardest to hear. Quick pause, and this is something new. For the first time since the 12 codes, there's a second document. It's called the 7 resets. Every time the world was erased, matched against the ledger you'll hear, and the checklist of signs for the 8th. 4 are already active, linked below, QR code on screen. That's all. Back to the video. The first want is copper that has been warmed by sunlight. The tablet is very specific on this point. It does not ask for copper. It asks for copper that is spent, in Salzmann's translation, quote, "one full day between dawn and dusk, lying in a place where nothing stands over it," unquote. Which is to say, copper that has been laid out flat, in an open field, under a clear sky, from sunrise until the sun goes down. The Kurgal, according to the tablet, cannot produce this themselves. Everything they have below the earth is metal that has never been warmed by anything but the slow, faint heat of the world's own interior. What they want from us is metal that has been touched by the star we live under. They believe, and the writer of the tablet does not attempt to explain why they believe it, That copper of this kind carries something the metal below the ground does not carry. They call it, in one line, the memory of the day, and they ask for it in quantities the tablet gives in ordinary Sumerian weights, and the quantities are not small. In 1 year of trade, according to the ledger's opening tally, they received copper equal in weight to what a large temple would have used in a full generation. The second want is grain that has known daylight. Again, the tablet is exact. It does not ask for barley. It does not ask for wheat. Rather, it asks for the grain of a plant that has grown, from seedling to head, above the surface of the earth, and it specifies that the grain must be harvested at the moment when the sun is at its highest point in the sky, and not before, and not after. There is a whole procedure written into the tablet for how this grain is to be dried, and how it is to be stored, and how it is to be brought to the trade site. The Kurgal do not eat this grain in the way we eat grain. They do not grind it into flour. According to the tablet, they take the grain and they place it in dark rooms, in vessels made of clay, and they leave it there. The scribe writes that the grain, in the dark rooms below, continues to hold what it took from the sun above. He writes that the Kurgal draw from it, over long periods of time, what the plant collected in its brief life on the surface. He does not say how they draw from it, nor does he say what they do with what they draw. He writes only that the grain is essential and that the trade cannot proceed without it. The third want is the harder one to say aloud. The Kurgal ask for the first teeth of children. Not teeth generally, not adult teeth, the teeth that a young child sheds when the second set begins to come in behind them. The tablet uses a Sumerian word for these teeth that Salzman had never seen used in any other document. He guessed at the meaning from context and from a matching term in a later Akkadian glossary. The word means, in his best rendering, the ones that fall on their own. The Kurgal, the tablet says, want these teeth in the exact condition they were in when they left the child's mouth. They want them unwashed. They want them unwrapped in cloth. And they want them brought within 1 full turn of the moon. The scribe writes that these teeth carry something he calls, in his own words, the mark of a body that is still being made. He does not explain what use the Kurgal have for that mark, nor does he name a quantity. He notes only that a household that offered such teeth in the trade received, in exchange, a share that no other kind of offering could purchase. The fourth want is water that has been made to boil. Fresh water. Water taken from a running stream or a spring, and then heated over an open fire until it moves on its own, and then poured, still hot, into a sealed vessel of fired clay, and brought to the trade site while the heat of it can still be felt through the walls of the jar. The Kurgal, according to the tablet, have all the water they could want, and their water is purer than anything drawn on the surface. What they do not have, and what they cannot make, is water that has known fire. The scribe writes that the fire changes the water in a way the Kurgal need but cannot produce. He writes that they take this water, still warm, and they carry it down into their cities, and they use it in a way he does not describe, and they return the empty jars, cleaned, for the next trade. In one line, the writer of the tablet notes something in passing that Salzman circled twice in his margin. He writes that the Kurgal, when they receive the water, do not drink it. They pour it, he writes, into rooms. It is worth stopping here, before the tablet goes further, to notice something about the shape of the first 4 wants. They are not, on their face, the wants of a mythical people. They are not gold, and they are not treasure, and they are not the blood of sacrifices in the way older folklores of underground beings tend to describe. Rather, they are copper, grain, teeth, and boiled water. 4 items a village would have on hand. 4 items that could be produced by a household that had no idea it was producing them for anyone but the local temple. And each of them has, according to the writer of the tablet, been touched by something that the Kurgal cannot reach. The copper has been warmed by the sun. The grain has grown under the sky. The teeth have formed inside a body that grew on the surface of the world. The water has been changed by fire, which the Kurgal, in one of the most curious lines Salzman translated, do not keep in their cities. The scribe writes, at the end of the section listing these 4 items, a sentence that seems at first to be a summary and turns out on second reading to be something else. He writes, quote, they ask for the things we do not know we are giving them, unquote. Salzman's marginal note next to that line reads, in a small, careful hand, the trade is older than the trade. What he meant by that, and what he was still writing about in the letters he sent in the final months of his life, was that the tablet describes an arrangement in which one side is fully aware of what is happening, and the other side, the human side, is only partly aware, and in most cases not aware at all. The Sumerians who wrote the tablet knew. The temples knew. A small number of families and a small number of towns knew. But the ordinary people who set copper in the sun to warm, and cut grain at midday, and gave their children's fallen teeth to the priest who passed through, did not know what they were giving, and did not know to whom. The next three wants, the fifth and the sixth and the seventh, are the ones the tablet places on a separate side of the clay from the others. The scribe has drawn a line, in the wet clay before firing, between the fourth item and the fifth. Salzman noted this in his transcription. He believed the line meant that the first four wants were the ordinary business of the trade, the wants that were asked for in every cycle, and that the next three were of a different kind. He believed they were the wants that were asked for only under certain conditions. Before we come to them, and before we come to what the Kurgal give in return, one final note on the ledger itself. Before we move on to the last three wants, stop for a second. What you just heard about the first four only makes sense on the full timeline, next to the 6 resets before it. The names, the dates, it's all in the 7 resets, linked below. Grab it, come back. What's next builds on it. QR code is on your screen. The fifth want is the name of a person, spoken aloud, at the entrance to the trade site, in the hour before sunrise. The tablet does not specify which person. It says only that the name must belong to someone who has died within the previous year, and that the person speaking it must have known the dead person while they were alive. The scribe writes that the Kurgal received the name and, in his phrasing, quote, take it into the ground with them, unquote. He does not say what they do with it. Salzman's note in the margin at this line is a single question mark, and underneath it, in smaller script, the word carried. What he meant by carried, he did not live long enough to explain. There is only one place in the tablet where the writer seems to comment on why the Kurgal asked for this. He writes that a name spoken by someone who loved the dead is not the same as a name written down. He writes that the Kurgal are able to hear the difference, and that they need the first kind, and only the first kind. The sixth want is iron that has been struck by lightning. The tablet, which is old enough that iron was still a rare metal on the surface, treats it as though it were exotic even for the Kurgal. The writer specifies that the iron must have been part of an object standing above the ground when the lightning fell. A tool left in a field, a blade set into a wall, a cooking iron left resting on stones. The strike must be witnessed. The iron must be recovered while the ground around it is still warm. It is to be brought to the trade site in a container that no other metal has touched. The Kurgal, according to the scribe, do not take this iron often. In some cycles of the trade, none is offered, because none has been produced. In cycles when it is offered, the scribe writes, the Kurgal open the container in front of the traders, and they look at what is inside and they do not speak for a length of time. Then they close the container and take it below. What they do with lightning-struck iron, the tablet does not say. It says only that when the trade includes it, the return from the Kurgal is greater than in any ordinary cycle. The seventh want is the one Salzman took the longest to translate, and the one his colleague in Vienna, when he finally saw the folder in Salzburg, refused for the first several minutes to read. It is a song. The tablet asks for a song, sung by 3 women who are related to one another by blood, at the entrance to the trade site, at the moment when the first light of the sun touches the highest point of the surrounding land. The women must be a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter, from the same line. The song is not specified. The words are not specified. What is specified is that the 3 women must know one another and must have lived, at some point in their lives, in the same house. The scribe writes that the Kurgal, when they hear this song, do not answer, and they do not appear. He writes that the song is not for them to speak back to. He writes that the song is what he calls, in his phrasing, quote, the price of the largest question, unquote. The Sumerians who kept the ledger, according to the tablet, asked the largest question rarely. In the entire span of years the ledger covers, the 7th want is recorded as having been paid only 4 times. What the Kurgal give in return is, in the tablet's own phrasing, less than what they take and worth more. The scribe uses that construction twice, once at the beginning of the 2nd section and once at the end of it. He wants the reader to understand that the trade is not equal in kind, and that neither side has ever thought it should be. The first thing the Kurgal give is warning of what the earth is about to do. The tablet describes a procedure by which the Kurgal, at the trade site, place their hands on the ground and speak to the human traders, and the human traders bring the warning back to the towns. The warnings are of specific events, a shaking on a specific day, a river changing its course in a specific season, a crack opening in a specific hillside. Salzman counted, in the ledger portion of the tablet, 63 separate warnings recorded across the years the ledger covers. He was able, in his own research, to correlate a small number of them with events that would later be dated by other Sumerian records to the same seasons. He did not publish this correlation. The second thing they give is the location of water that no surface person has yet found. The Kurgal know, in a way the tablet describes as complete, where every source of fresh water beneath the ground lies. They give this knowledge to the human traders, in exchange for the ordinary cycles of the trade, in the form of directions and distances measured from known landmarks. Villages that traded, according to the ledger, did not run out of water in drought years. Villages that did not trade, did. The third thing they give is the location of ore, not gold. The tablet is clear that the Kurgal do not treat gold as valuable and do not offer it. They offer copper, they offer tin, and they offer, on one recorded occasion, a metal that Salzman was not able to identify from the description, a metal that the scribe writes was, quote, heavier than any two metals joined, unquote. The traders who received the directions to this metal reached the site and, according to a marginal note in the tablet, chose not to dig. The fourth thing they give is the cure for certain diseases. The tablet lists 4 illnesses by name, in Sumerian medical terminology that Salzman could match against later Babylonian glossaries. 2 of them are recognizable as respiratory infections. One is a wasting condition that appears in children. One is a fever that the scribe describes as a fever of the second summer. For each, the Kurgal give the specific plant or the specific mineral, and the specific preparation and the specific dose. The traders bring the instructions back. The temples record which households were treated. The recovery rates, according to the ledger, are close to complete. The fifth thing they give is the direction of lost people. If a person has gone missing from a village, and the household of that person brings, in the ordinary trade, an object the missing person once wore or held, the Kurgal will tell the traders whether the person is still alive, and if they are, in which direction they now walk. The tablet does not say how the Kurgal know this. The scribe writes only that they are, in his phrasing, quote, closer to the ground than we are, unquote, and that people on the surface leave a mark in the ground that the Kurgal are able to read. The sixth thing they give is the names of children who will not live to be adults. This is not, in the tablet's description, a curse. It is a warning. The Kurgal, according to the scribe, are able to tell, at a certain point in a child's life, whether the child will reach adulthood, and if not, roughly when the child will die. They give these names to the priests of the towns, and the priests keep them, and the priests, when the death of one of the named children arrives, note it in the temple register. Salzman calculated, from a partial temple register recovered from that he was permitted to examine, that the Kurgal's warnings, over a period of 11 years, were correct in a proportion he described in his notes as beyond any interpretation but the literal. The seventh thing they give, and the last, is the answer to the largest question. The scribe does not say what the largest question is. He writes only that when the seventh want, the Song of the Three Women, has been offered at the entrance to the trade site, the Kurgal give, in return, a single answer, whispered by a single one of them, into a jar of oil that the traders carry back to the temple sealed. The temple, upon receiving the jar, opens it in a room set aside for that purpose. What is inside the room after the opening, the tablet does not describe. The scribe writes that no answer of this kind has ever been recorded on clay. It has only been spoken, once, by the priest who heard it, to the priest who came after, at the moment of the first priest's death. The third section of the tablet is the shortest. Salzman called it the terms. It describes when the trade holds, and when it fails, and what happens when it fails. The trade holds, according to the scribe. As long as both sides bring what they have agreed to bring, in the seasons they have agreed to bring it, to the sites that have been agreed upon. The tablet lists 9 such sites. 7 of them, Salzman was able to place, from the geographical descriptions, in what is now southern Iraq, northern Syria, and southeastern Turkey. 2 of them he could not place. The scribe writes that if a site is disturbed, if a stone is moved from it that was not moved by the trade, the Kurgal will not come to that site again, and the trade at that site will end. The trade fails, according to the tablet, in 3 ways. The first is that the surface side stops bringing what it has agreed to bring. The second is that the surface side brings the wrong things, or brings them in the wrong condition, and does so 3 times in a row. The third, which the scribe describes in a passage Salzman noted was written in a different hand from the rest of the tablet, is that the surface side brings people, living people, to the trade site and offers them. The scribe writes that this has been attempted twice. in the memory of the temple that kept the ledger, and that both times the Kurgal refused, and that both times the people were returned unharmed, and that both times, in the years that followed, the trade at that site slowed and eventually stopped and did not resume. What happens when the trade ends, the tablet describes in one line. The scribe writes, quote, "The ground remembers what was owed to it," unquote. He does not elaborate. Salzman, in his final letters, believed the line meant that the Kurgal do not forget the trade when it ends, and that they wait, and that in some period afterward, they take what they were not given. He did not write down what he thought the taking would look like. Dr. Reinhard Salzman died in the summer of 2011 of what the coroner in Munich recorded as a sudden cardiac event. He was 58. The folder he had shown his colleague in Salzburg was not among his effects. The tablet listed at the Munich lab under the number K4106 was, at the time of his death, in a private collection in Basel. The current owner has not permitted study. No photograph of the intact tablet has ever been published. What we have is the translation, and the marginal notes, and the letters, and the memory of one meeting in a hotel in Salzburg between two men, one of whom is dead and one of whom will not speak. The last thing the tablet says, and the last thing Salzman translated before he set the folder aside for what would turn out to be the last time, is a note the scribe added at the very bottom, on the reverse of the clay, in a hand that is smaller and less careful than the rest. He writes that the ledger has been kept, and that the temple will keep it, and that the trade will hold as long as the temple stands. He writes that when the temple falls, the ledger will be buried, and the trade will end, and the ground will remember. The temple that kept this ledger fell. In the archaeological record we are able to reconstruct, sometime in the 21st century before Christ. The tablet was found in a private catalog 4,000 years later, and the ground, if the scribe was right about anything, has been remembering ever since. It remembers, in Salzman's last line, "The copper never laid in the sun, the grain never cut at midday, the teeth held past the moon's turn." Still remembers. Sleep well.